Tell me how you approach the industry, the entrenched bureaucracies, the conflicting interests, all that political red tape, the undercurrent of fear. What makes you rush to work and push for change?
You don't rush to work because of fear, Nirmal. I mean, you rush to work because of passion. As I said, what makes my job interesting is really the fact that you have an opportunity in a specific moment in time to drive sustainability in an industry which is evolving, and that's for me at least the biggest motivation to take this job, despite all the problems and all the complexities that can emerge, in implementing sustainability at this scale. But at the same time, despite the risk and, as I said, the problems that this may create, you also have opportunities that another platform may not give you, and I think it's a compromise between these two things. But the biggest motivation is really the value that I see in sustainability for the built environment, for a company of this scale and complexity.
Cristina?
I stay very, very, very connected with the purpose and very connected with knowledge as a means to communicate what's necessary, what's relevant. So I'm not very fond of having a very personal approach in work relationships. And although I'm very passionate, I also seek to be very respectful on how people behave and how people think, and their own reactions come with insecurities, with willingness to infuse power they have their own reasons, and I just try to be very pragmatic and deal with the content and deal with what is at stake. But I'm very, very focused on knowledge-based approach, on science, on evidence. I've been working on it all my life, and I do believe that it brings a lot of trust in conversations, in professional relationships, when you put knowledge and evidence at the very center, instead of just being very passionate and be driven with your passion.
What about you, Marianne? I mean, you deal with people in many disciplines, and they aren't always swayed by knowledge and science. Do you struggle with the job and personalities and egos? I mean, how do you cope with all of that in the course of a day?
I actually love that challenge. I think in the same way that you're trying to figure out what makes us tick, it's my job to figure out what makes that specific person tick. And there has been many times where, I would enter a meeting and then it's like we're practically fighting, or we're just, nothing is going through. We can't understand each other until such time that I realize oh, this is this person's perspective. Now I understand where he's coming from. And then I flip my entire conversation to be centered around that person's perspective. And then we walk away with a deal. So it's like that with everyone. I cannot even say if you're going to talk to a person in government, it's going to be this way. If you're going to talk about our developer, it's going to be this. Every single person is different. So what I would usually do, yes, I have a slide deck. I could change things at the very last minute. I may not use it at all. I may not even use the word sustainability or regeneration or Regenesis project. I don't need all of that. I just need to know what is my leverage based on that specific person. So sometimes it's just a matter of doing a little bit of a background check. There was one time I was scheduled to have a meeting with the mayor. I did not know what to expect, but then I just quickly had this conversation with his officer. And then I understood from him, so what is his aspirations? So from that very quick, conversation, I had a glimpse into his psychology. So when I entered into that meeting, I did not use my slides at all. I used that my understanding of that person's worldview and psyche. It's almost like playing chess, So long story short, I walked out of that meeting with a deal, with a project, and I was not a well-known architect. So I think the best answer is, you have to understand what makes each person tick. everyone is driven by something and is also afraid of something. So you have to use that to your leverage.
So Giovanni, how do you deal with the headwinds of your job? You work in a very large organization with over 11,000 employees. I mean, how do you deal with the structure of your workplace and also the kind of ambitious targets that you've set up for yourself?
At least when I started this job, my approach was more technical and scientific. So it was driven by numbers and charts, and etc. Then I realized that this is, again, a language that not many people understand. So I kind of pivoted towards a more personal approach. And this was more driven by the fact that there are different ways of making interpretations about sustainability. So I wanted to understand a little more, for example, what it means from a CFO implementing sustainability versus a CEO or a Chief Development Officer. And that's the reason why I decided to take a personal perspective, not only for Singapore, but for the different countries where the company operates. So I've been traveling to China, to Vietnam, etc., to experience myself what the culture was there, and also to see firsthand and touch the buildings that the company was delivering. So this one, I found it much more impactful and much faster, I would say, even in the adoption, rather than an approach which was more scientific and technical. And I, as I continue in this journey in such a large organization, I felt that level of communication becomes even more powerful for staff. So for the larger group of people which are indirectly affected by the decisions that sustainability imposes on the company. So I would say that this was a kind of switch from more technical to something which is more personal.